Mr. Belushi.
Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Now the clerk please call the roll.
Supervisor Fountain?
Here.
Supervisor Horning?
Here.
Clerk Chopu? Here. Trustee Collier?
Here.
Trustee Germain?
Here.
Trustee Harper?
Here.
Trustee Petrucci?
Here. Thank you. Item number 4 is approval of our meeting agenda.
I'd like to propose that we remove item 6F from the consent agenda for further discussion before action.
Okay.
Remove it or just move it down to 7A?
Remove it from the consent agenda and replace it somewhere else on the...
Let's move it to 8B.
8B.
Yeah. Was there support for that motion?
Support.
Okay.
I don't think you need to get the support for the agenda as well.
Yep.
But
Any other discussion?
you need support for everything.
Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Call of the public this evening? Being nothing to call of the public, we'll move on to item number 6, which is approval of our consent agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Treasurer Horning, second by Trustee Colaney. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We have no pending or new business this evening. Move on to number 8, which is Board and Managers Report. And we start with our second meeting in April with Clerk Shofu.
I have no report.
Treasurer Horning.
No report.
Trustee Colaney.
Just briefly, we had our bi-monthly meeting of the Hartland Enrichment and Recreation Organization Board. As you know, there's 3 board members that are part of this board that are part of that nonprofit. We are planning our annual golf outing again in, I believe it's July 17th. It's a Sunday. And we really appreciate if we get support of the entire board to come out and participate in. It's a 9-hole golf outing. We will have hole sponsorships and other ability to help support the Hero organization, in particular the Teen Center. The Teen Center is going to be looking at looking at projects to help expand the Teen Center and other projects. We're going to look at the park plan and see what we can undertake in terms of, we thought we'd start looking at that and see what we can undertake in terms of helping out the township in terms of certain attributes of the parks. We're not getting any direction from the township board, so we'll just have to do it ourselves in terms of what we like to undertake. And hopefully the board will accept some of our proposed projects on behalf of the township. Do you have anything to add?
I will when it's my turn.
Okay. Other than that, I have nothing further.
Trustee Germain.
Thank you. We have our active issues list, and I would just encourage the rest of the board that we bring that topic of the hero's role to the forefront so we can discuss that relatively soon. Nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Harper.
Just one thing, it's more of a information. I don't know if everybody caught this or not, but the Department of Homeland Security issued a notice that people using Windows and have QuickTime on your computer, that there's some kind of a problem with QuickTime, and the department's recommending that you delete it because Apple is not correcting the problem, and Apple is not really responding other than on their website showing you how to delete it if you don't know how to delete a program. So that just came out in the last 48 hours. So just check your computers. It only applies to people who have Windows-based computers, as opposed to if you have an Apple computer in QuickTime, it doesn't apply. But Windows-based with Apple's QuickTime.
Why is Homeland Security concerned about a QuickTime computer as it affects Microsoft? Everybody should ask that question.
Well, they're concerned because it could take over your computer. Apparently, this error in it, or not error, but this virus or bug or whatever it is, it's like an open door for people to hack into your computer. So,
Okay.
Thank you. Trustee Petrucci?
No report.
I have no report this evening, other than it's approaching the large item. Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks away?
What, May
21st.
21st, Saturday.
21st, okay.
Yeah.
So we've got another month or so.
9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Okay. All right. Just want to keep that out in the forefront as people are getting outside and in their garages and such for a nice weekend. Manager Wickman.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just one quick highlight from the operational report. We had put out there that the consumer confidence report that we're required to do for our water, drinking water quality for those on the municipal water system, we did fast forward that, and that is complete. Thank you to Public Works for getting that done, and just able to provide the assurance that we are providing safe drinking water to everybody. Obviously, there's a lot of concern going on in Flint. Now there could still be fixtures in people's homes that might have lead in them, and if they have concerns about their drinking water inside their home, they may want to have that tested to see if any of their fixtures or plumbing might be adding anything else into it. Other than that, happy to answer questions about the operation reports or anything else happening around the township.
I have a quick question. Is there an update on the developer with 59 and 23 following our meeting with him last 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, not much of an update other than what I sent out to the board last week. We have not heard anything more.
Any other questions for Manager Wickman? Being none, let's move on to number 8A, which is budget debrief.
So I wanted to take an opportunity before too much time goes by. We've done it the last couple of years. We've made it through the budget process, always an important time of year for us, and want to make sure I capture any thoughts from the board on how that process went for you, anything that worked particularly well or anything we should take a look at for next year. I want to capture that feedback while it's fresh in your minds a little bit. If you have anything you want to discuss here, or you can, of course, share that with me offline. We're always looking to improve our processes. So,
Any questions this evening?
Didn't we discuss maybe that we wanted to do the reviews and the whole compensation issue earlier so it actually shows up in the budget?
I believe that was one of the things we talked about.
I think that was
approving that.
I was thinking the same thing.
That's the only thing I
Yeah, I
can
was
think
thinking the
of.
same thing. And I just, we've gone for a few years about how we've gone back and forth in different ways. I think I'd like to hear maybe we need to think outside the box a little bit and how compensation is dealt with.
I think we were going to talk about that after this election cycle. We're just going to take a fresh look at that again.
and there was some information board members had asked for, and we were working on gathering that. So there'll be opportunity to talk about that.
There are no other questions tonight for Manager Workman?
No, but about the budget, I have a thought to share.
Go ahead.
The budgeting process?
Sure, yeah.
I was thinking that there would be value in trying to just schedule a Saturday meeting and go over a larger portion of it at one time instead of breaking it up over a 2-month period.
That could be a very easy way to approach it. Does that sound like is that something the board thinks would be value to you?
Well, I think it could be it from a standpoint that basically everybody up here is still working, and I know at some of our later evening it starts to get harder and harder to concentrate on important issues like that. And we did have a pretty productive meeting last Saturday. Just it was a little fresh, and we got a lot done, a lot accomplished. Is there a timing issue with you, James, because you time your projects coming out at a certain time?
I don't think so. I mean, if that will help move the process along quicker, it sounds like it could. That could be beneficial. I would think that sometime in February would be the ideal timing of that, so some Saturday in February, if that's acceptable to the board. So as it gets closer, we'll start to put dates out there and make sure calendars work out. That sounds good.
Good idea, Matt. Anything else? Anything else, Matt?
No.
Oh, okay. With that, thank you, Manager Wickman, and we'll go into item number 9, closed session.
Oh, excuse me.
Oops.
We skipped one.
8B.
8B.
Oh, I forgot. And I had an arrow to it and everything. Trustee Germain asked to have the Horizon contract taken up for some questioning. Go ahead.
I have no qualms with the work that Horizon is doing and the fact that they're maintained their prices for a number of years with no increase except for this year with a slight increase of 3%. Their work continues to grow, though, because we've added the water properties and we've opened a new park here a couple years ago and realized we needed to do some mowing there and things of that nature. So I have two primary questions regarding the contracts that are proposed. One is, periodically we go for bids from other contractors for work like this. We do it with our professional services and just verify that the rates are good, things like that. So as the contract dollar amount continues to grow, we have the liberty to just exercise our option and authorize the contracts year after year. But periodically it seems like it'd be good to verify that we're getting a good price. There might be someone else willing to do similar work for less money. I think that's just a good general purpose thing to do periodically, and I have no idea when the last time this was sent out for actual bids, but I suspect it's been at least 3 or 4 years. Do you happen to know how long it's been?
The mowing, it's been a few years, and I agree that that's a good practice to get into. We do that with other things, and generally it's between 3 to 7 years that we try to turn that over. It's probably about time for that. I would advocate for that being next year for probably one significant reason. We, of course, have talked about the potential merits of maybe buying some of this equipment and doing this with our new labor that we have in the water system, and we'll have an opportunity to look into that here in the future. Once we do that and we decide what we might, whether or not we might want to do some of that in-house, then we would have a better defined scope of what we would be taking back out to bid. So for one more year, I'd advocate, staying the course, and then we can agree to, once we make a decision on whether to do any of that with our own equipment, then we'd know the scope going forward to go get, rebid that.
Okay. Well, I would advocate for doing it this year because the contract size continues to grow, and that's my opinion. I think that it should have been done before we decided to just go ahead and send this through on a consent agenda item. The second concern I have is that the Horizon Settlers Park contract that's proposed is for 26 mowings. And that is about 6 times more than we've done in the past, perhaps. We started out realizing that the weeds were growing up tall next to the pathways, so we decided to mow around it. And I think they used a brush hog initially, and because of the twirling action of the blade, it was throwing a lot of the debris that was being mowed onto the pathway itself. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but to correct that issue that was developing because of the mowing style, they went to a more conventional mower, which threw the grass away from the pathway. The frequency was kind of up to the DPW director. And I honestly don't know how many times it was done last year, perhaps 4, 5, 6 maybe, do you know?
I guess that real quick here. Basically, the way Horizon has written that contract is a not to exceed. I know the verbiage isn't there, but very similar with the snow removal winter maintenance contract. Basically, it will cover up to 26 mowings at that price. Last year, similar contract, but what we did is we had it done every 2 weeks. And we just had them put it on their schedule when they do the township hall. We have the perimeter of the parking lot done with the township hall, which is a weekly basis. The pathway ended up being every other week, or every other cut, I should say. So that's what we do actually propose, but that cost is good up to that many cuts. So it is misleading that way, but you also find it in the contract with 30-day notice from either side. As simple as that, we can opt out of this contract at any time. It's very unusual. You won't find that in a lot of the competitors' contracts. We just have a good working relationship. All the time that Horizon's invested on the M59 project and with our large item cleanup day, and the fact that they haven't raised the prices in the past 3 years, we know we're going to change the scope. There's a high probability the scope may be changed next year. So certainly I have no hesitation going out for competitive bids. It just felt like this year to wrap up to go ahead and extend that contract with the 3% increase based on how much we may reduce it next year. So apologize if I overstepped my bounds by recommending
Well,
that.
I do recognize that they have been doing quite a bit of work on the M59 medians, and it makes sense to keep them on for that, because we only did a partial of the proposed work last year, and perhaps this year we'll expand and do another part. That's not in this particular contract, but it's certainly something that we may consider and authorize eventually. Regarding the way this contract is prepared, though, for the park property, as far as I know, the township board has never given direction to the administration on how frequently we want it mowed or what the conditions are that we expect the park to be maintained. And I think that there is value in us providing a budgetary number or something on what we feel comfortable with allocating toward park maintenance. When you start looking at the multitude of parks we have and other things, fortunately we're paying for mowing in other places, but it's being done by third parties, if you know what I mean, in some of the ball fields and so on. So for that reason, I just thought, I wanted to raise those things. Do we want to go out for bid now or later, or partway through the year? And are we comfortable allocating up to $7,000 just to mow around the trails? Doesn't include the parking lot mowing or the brush hog mowing. Those are all additional costs, around the detention pond.
I thought last year we had like 4 mowings, and then it was growing up, so we added a couple more. I don't ever recall us going to 2 weeks. Is that what we ended up doing last year? Was 2
James
weeks?
sent the email out.
Yeah, you sent an email out.
To me, that seems like a lot for, is my personal opinion, but. And I really don't, and I agree with you. I don't like the way this is written because it says 50% is paid up front. So you're already into
It's almost like a construction contract on that particular one. The other two are different. It's more on a pay-as-you-go.
I mean, it's all going to depend on what kind of weather you get. If it's a dry summer, we're not going to need it as much. Last year was a wet summer, so.
But I guess the purpose, Mike, the reason I'm raising this question is, what do we expect for the edge of the pathway to be looking like? That's the key. Once we make that decision, that dictates how frequently they need to mow.
My opinion, this is a lot more than I would envision us having to maintain that.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is to be more of a rustic park, and so if you're walking down asphalt path, which is 10 feet wide, I believe.
That is correct. Before it grows in.
If the grass beside you is 5 or 6 inches tall, to me that doesn't matter. It's almost like a barrier to stop people from wandering off in other places. And furthermore, whatever we decide to do with the asphalt path may have implications on what we end up doing with some of the other trails that we were thinking about adding around the water bodies and things like that.
How many times did they spray the parking lot last year?
They did it once.
And this contract's for 4 times. Why do they think it's needed so frequent?
It is an up to amount.
This contract, though, is reflected in the budget we approved, is it not?
Absolutely.
I mean, we technically kind of approved what we wanted for the parks based on previous discussions that we had where we were going to mow the paths at least twice a month or something like that. I thought we approved that at one point in time.
But this is my concern, Larry, is that we have creep going on here. We're given these broad numbers in the budget meeting, this is how much we want to allocate. Now we're talking about actually authorizing the work. And those are 2 separate things.
Okay.
They should not.
I understand.
The fact that we have the money in the budget, I mean, we may want to build a skyscraper in the back. We had money in the budget, but.
If I may, Mr. Supervisor, I respectfully disagree with the way you're framing the conversation, Trustee Germain, because it tends to reflect that somehow that creep, or other words you've used, is that somehow staff has been lax in this or is not being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars, and I would respectfully defend against that implication. We had a conversation in great detail on this in August. And I did share that if you had a chance, anybody had a chance to look at it again, where the frequency of the cuttings was discussed. And there was a discussion of that being up to biweekly as needed. My effort with the email yesterday was to also clarify, yes, it says that. We are not obligated to that, and we have no intention to cut that anything more than 2 weeks apart, if not less often. And then, yes, it's well within the budget to do these things, and that's not the end of the board's purview in this matter. And it's expected of your staff to be good stewards in making decisions along the way of what's the right frequency. So we did talk about it. I feel very comfortable that the board has previously given us direction on that frequency. If you want to hone in on that exact frequency more, we can have that discussion. There's a pretty good foundation in the board's previous discussion to this. If you want to do it less often,
well, I can't speak for Matt, but I wish that there was some language within this document to state that. Because when you read it, just for what it basically says we're doing it 25 times, and we're going to, it doesn't say that at the direction of the DPW director, frequency may change. Something to that effect would answer the question, at least that I have on this. It doesn't say anything that it could be less.
And to take it further,
unless I read it wrong.
What could have been better clarified as well is that what the board would be approving here is our standard contract for services, one that you've seen before. The board has approved the format and the language of that. And these would be simply an attachment to it, that the scope of work would be defined in the scope of, in the standard contract. That would be a cover to these, and that's not included as an attachment, and we should have done that. And that would have helped clarify that.
Well, I think also unless you think that I remember every meeting that we have a discussion on, why wasn't your discussion on here that this was discussed at length in August? Please review the minutes from such and such date so that you're prepared if you have any questions. We took our direction in that regard. I think it's a little bit disingenuous on your part to essentially tell a board member that he's wrong for bringing this up when you didn't put anything in here regarding that meeting. I kind of find that rather disrespectful in the way you approach that situation. You got a board member who's legitimately concerned about how this contract is, and we've watched you just give a whole bunch of reasons why we could have done a little better here. So I'm a little taken aback by this, because I think it is a real concern that things get put in here because we have timelines and so forth. But the creep does occur. I've heard this time and time again. What comes first? The budget? And we put something in a budget? Or our decision later on when we... Because I've been told time and time again, oh, well, we're putting this in the budget. We're estimating our costs, but you guys get to have another bite at the apple and take a look at it. So I think, Trustee Germain's concerns are legitimate here, and I'm a little taken aback by this conversation. I think that your memo here doesn't even provide the kind of data that legitimately raises issues that he's brought up. So,
if we look at the growing season from May to September, that's 5 months. That would be 20 weeks. If you're doing it every other week, that'd be 10 to 12 mowings. Is that what was the logic to get 25 in here? I'm trying to understand that.
I did not put it in there. That's up to 25 mowings. That's what the cost would be.
I guess my question...
I understand your concerns, and I'm more than willing to address them. I will go back and we can address them. If you're not comfortable, don't sign the contract.
Have they been working already without a contract?
Yeah. We just pay them just like everything else we've done.
Yeah, Bob, that's the only part that got me when it said 25 cuts, and I probably should have come to you earlier, but I didn't feel good today.
Absolutely.
That even if you go April till November, saying we had the most beautiful weather, that's like 14 cuts, and it says 25.
And absolutely,
Yeah.
I'll take full responsibilities for the inaccuracies on there.
Well, no, that's all right. It's just when they want us to pay half up front, that's 13 mowings. That may be maybe more than we have all year.
And it'd be fine. My question is kind of like, I canceled my service because if you don't call them up, so you tell them not to come out, they come anyway, right? And I think the concern here is it's up to 25. Who makes the decision whether they come out or not?
Historically, I have. And,
Okay.
I guess that was my comfort level with Horizon. Every contract we've had with Horizon says 50% due up front. We've never paid a dime.
Okay.
And I know that's standard language on his contract, but the same thing was on our winter maintenance, and we never
But we
paid.
didn't pay it up front?
No, he's never made us. And again, that's my comfort with the relationship, and I'm not making excuses for it. I'll take full responsibility. We saw it out there on M59 when the island was done, and many different projects like that. So historically what happens is I call him and say, hey, it's time to cut. Next time you guys are out doing Township Hall, I don't want a special trip, but go ahead and hit it. And same thing with the retention ponds. In the grand scheme of things, he's even indicated, he's like, do you even want a contract? Here's the pricing. You guys can approve the pricing. You tell me when to do it, and I'll do it, sort of thing. I want to get you a contract because that's historically how we've done it. The language is not correct. I will correct that, and I can re-present that to you.
Okay. The two commercial lawn maintenance agreements that were provided, neither one of them have that 50% up front, so I think that might be a proposal that he uses if he's installing brick paving or something like that, more of a construction-related past project rather than just lawn mowing.
Absolutely. I will totally get it straightened out, and I apologize.
So will this be on our next agenda, or do you need this?
No, I'll put it on the next agenda.
Okay. They're good till then?
We can
I ask that we at least agree on a number of mowings that we think is appropriate.
Yeah, if you want to provide
set
a
up a
scope, we can certainly go that.
Work within it.
Like I said, if April till November, if it's all beautiful, that would be maximum 14.
That's twice a month.
Which is
Right.
almost,
That would be a maximum.
which is almost half of what is in the contract right now.
It's kind of like what Bob is saying, though. It doesn't matter.
Because we're not paying.
It doesn't
Right, if we
really
don't
matter.
if they take out the
because-
line that says we pay 50% up front.
But James said that it's going to go under our standard contract anyway, so that our contract overrules that term.
Because basically, it could be bi-weekly if we get a lot of rain in April or June.
He's willing to
Right.
work with us, and
And they'll work with it, yeah.
he'll just do it for the same price and extend it out if we have an extra cut.
Department
Yeah,
of Public Works.
I don't want to, I
Right.
would not necessarily put a
No,
maximum on
me
it,
either.
right?
Can we just line through that?
At the direction of,
Yeah, we can write that in the contract, too, at the discretion of the public
And
works.
can we line out payment 50%?
Yeah, absolutely, I will correct everything.
No, but I'm saying we could do it tonight if we made those corrections. Why would we need to have them retype it?
It's no big deal.
Well, and you don't even necessarily have to have these in hand to begin with, because again, the standard contracts for services has a scope section. We basically are pulling the pieces out of this, putting it right in the scope. We can prepare that standard contract with what you're approving tonight if you'd like to do that. If you'd prefer to see a clean version and wait 2 weeks, we can do that too.
Really, the contract is the least of my worries, because I know we can work that out. What I wanted the board to discuss is how high do we want the grass to grow? It seems simple,
to me,
but
12 times is plenty.
Well, we did that in August.
I don't recall that.
He even sent us the email and told you what time to look it up, and you voted no. Everybody voted yes, but you.
well, if
No,
it's
because
not
it was,
consistent.
no, the reason that there was a budget amendment.
Right.
That's
To
what
add
triggered
mowing.
it, because we needed to mow it again, and there was a budget
Right.
amendment.
So we
And you
did.
disagreed at that point that it was already August.
I do remember
Why do we
that.
have to do
Yeah.
it 6 more times when it's already, we need 2 more cuttings? And it was, again, not to exceed
Right.
amount. So I don't
But
think you need to.
here's my concern, and perhaps we discussed it, and I don't recall, but, we started out, well, we've got weeds growing here instead of grass, perhaps. We need to mow them down and make it look nice. Okay, that's a good step. And then it moved into, brush hogging it 2 or 3 times a year, the first year, to, well, we're going to change the style of cut, the type of machine, and increase the frequency. This is what I'm talking about by creep. And if the board's decision is we want the park to look great, immaculate, and then that's fine, I can live with that. But as far as I know, we've never given good direction on what we anticipate on our more rural-looking park setting.
The reason I recall that we went to more than a couple times, because when you had the brush hog and cutting that heavier grass, a lot of it ended up on the path itself, and they had to go and blow it. So it was, if we mowed it more frequently, whatever that number is, so we don't have the extra debris on the path itself. That was the goal.
And we had originally planned on the parking lot perimeter being brush hogged with the side of the path. However, it was discussed much earlier that, perhaps we just include that with the township hall because that's where the patrons are trying to cross and get up to the path. And it has a slight incline. So we had just done the actual perimeter, just 2 passes around the perimeter. What it came up to was the cost of brush hogging was not that much more to finish cut it, and that was the reason why we had talked about doing the budget amendment was perhaps we could go to a bi-weekly finish cut as needed, whether that be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but a more frequent than the brush hog because of the clippings on the path. As we add more features, I'm sure that this creep will continue to go. We have the butterfly garden, which isn't a big deal. That's another path. We put in a dozen benches, which now need 2 passes around them. We're not paying an increase because of those features, but I imagine once we do a pavilion, if we ever do an amphitheater and bathrooms, there is an expectation that each one of those will require an additional sort of mowing increase, I would assume.
Okay, but no one is answering my question. What do we anticipate? What is our goal along the pathways? Do we want it to look like our front yards? Or do we just want to keep it mowed frequently enough so we don't have trees and brush growing there? That's my question. Everyone's quiet. If we can answer that, then we can say what we'd like to do. We have someone in the audience with a question.
I I've never been to a meeting December 14th.
Unfortunately, you can't say anything. But since you're here tonight, do you have a question?
Yes, I don't, this is my first time, like I've said, but I actually have an idea. Is there a way that you can calculate how many loans that you actually do and then budget that down? So therefore, it's not 25, but yet they have around the number to go by a budget. Because you can calculate those and go from the budget, which is whatever you guys have, and figure out that way.
I've said my statement, not to exceed 12 at the discretion of the DPW director.
12 or 14?
It's going down.
I'm taking note. We can go back to 6 or 5.
I just say 14 because what if we do have a rainy July? We have to have it.
I'm indifferent.
I'll move that to,
14.
that would be my recommendation. Brush hog, and then if it's dry in June and it doesn't need to be mowed, you don't mow it.
Now, you okay with the finish mower? You just said brush hog.
Yeah, I don't.
Whatever.
Oh, okay. There is a difference, and that's why I want to, okay.
It's never going to look like.
I'll answer Matt's question. I personally would rather have it more towards the finished side than
Me
the
too.
unfinished side, personally. Okay? It may be a rustic park, but it's still a park in our township, so I lean more towards the finished side. That's my opinion.
As a person who walks it, I like looking like I'm not going to have critters running in front of me all the time.
All right, Joe Petrucci.
I like the finished side too. There's plenty of rustic around the finished side,
Yep.
and it gives it a little cleaner look for the path. And it's only by the path, and then it turns very rustic and very brushy, and what you're supposed to do. So I think it's a little cleaner look for the township.
I would agree. You don't think you're going to use the finish cut?
Finish cut, not to exceed 14.
Not to exceed 14 times.
Perfect.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
Nope.
Okay. And then you'll clean up whatever
Absolutely.
that thing is, and we can do something.
And I apologize.
So,
Did you go with 14?
I did.
But that's the exact amount, isn't it?
Well, that's it through November. You know, do we
You're not
mow in
gonna mow-
November?
I can't imagine us.
You're not going to mow it
Right.
after October 1st.
Well, you
No, you won't.
What we tend to do is get the
I
brush
mowed all
hogging of the
until
sled
Thanksgiving
hill
this year.
in
Yeah, we
November.
did too.
But that's a whole nother
That's why I
topic.
said through Thanksgiving.
But it's a park, so you don't have to,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, you're good?
Good.
Do we need to have a formal motion on that since we took it off the agenda?
My only
Unless
concern, the reason I asked for it was 14, my only concern is that there's no extra there in case you
Right.
needed it. That's my only concern. And if you do get a rainy month, you're going to need to do it every week. You are, or it's going to look bad, and you're going to get clumps of grass everywhere because it's long and they can't cut it and this and that and the other thing. So I would like to have at least a 1 or 2 cushion on the thing.
16?
So, in case you do get a rainy month, but not a cushion up to 26 like they have.
16?
Pardon me?
16?
Even 15 or 16, just give them a little bit of, in case you needed to get them out there for some reason that we,
Yep.
don't anticipate.
Personally, I'd just remove the cap on it, just say yes.
At his discretion.
And at his discretion, he knows what we'd like, we tend towards the finished side of it, so, why worry about the number?
True.
Because I think the number translates to the price you get. And I think if you call them up for a special cut, it's going to probably be different than the price you get on the bulk cuts.
I don't know.
Normally, I would say, but Horizon has been very good at honoring their prices for the extras we've done. We've done a couple extra cuts on certain
And
things.
they haven't charged more for it? Well, then we can go with 14.
We've had to do some additional, the retention pond. So
Then we can go
So-
with 14, as long as they can hold to that. then-
absolutely. I mean, if it was an issue of not holding to the price, I wouldn't do it. We would be having a different discussion
All right.
with the contractor. So,
Yeah, I would say with 14 then. I thought there would be a different price.
Okay,
I have one more question before we move on.
go ahead.
The commercial lawn maintenance agreements show that it's a I don't know if it looks like a 3-year contract, 2016 to 2018.
They are basically, it's a 3-year contract, but there's an option to renew at the end of every year, which kind of, I don't want to say meaningless, because every contract has a 30-day cancellation